sorry to disappoint all of you, but I will not be talking about sex today. I will be talking about sexuality education and why we need it. Now, as I go about my work, counseling, training young people, adults, kids, I often wonder how we changed from a nation that celebrated the divine sensuality of human beings here to a nation where this happens.
सेक्स मालूम है आपको?
So yeah, this also happened. And I also wonder how we changed from a country that taught the world to have sex in more than 100 impossible positions to a country where this also happens.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning, students. Today, we are going to talk about education.
So yeah, any reminders from sex ed classes in school? Yeah, plenty, I'm sure, plenty. All of us going like this, not looking at each other, not talking. Now, if you think about it, it's actually not funny. The video credits are on the screen. It's very interesting how we, as human beings, completely lost touch of our sensuality. The innate feelings of sexuality, of sensuality, of trying to explore your bodies through touch is as natural to human beings as breathing. You know, when babies are born, they start exploring the world through touch. Touch is the very basis of our evolution as a human being. And yet, we find it difficult to talk about these things. Even though we're making beautiful poetry, we're making art, we're making sculptures, the clothes that we wear, the things that we use to adorn ourselves are all testament to our sensuous nature as human beings. Without touch, without feeling, everything is lost. And yet we don't talk about this in schools. We don't talk about this in homes. And we really do not have classes talking about things like that because Hi Ram, you know. So I'm not going to give you a whole lecture about why we need sex ed. I'm just going to share this something that happened with me and my son. So he's basically the inspiration for everything I am right now. When he was 9 years old, he came home to me from school bearing this slip of paper which had something scribbled on it. Have a look. Can you make out? It had the words www.xnxx.com. Now I'm willing to bet my life savings on the fact that all you young people sniggering over there know what this is. But I won't because izzat ka sawal hai. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the name of one of the world's largest free porn websites, where sexually explicit material from heterosexual porn, homosexual porn, animal porn, rape porn, underage videos, and extremely violent, abusive porn is freely available to anybody with internet access. Now, the problem here is not the existence of porn per se. It is an industry, unfortunately, which works on human trafficking. It works on kidnapping, on coercive sex. It is a business which also taps into the loneliness of millions of porn users. The problem here is that this information was passed on to my child by another child who was also only 9. With the suggestion that you should watch it. It's a lot of fun. It teaches you how to rape. My brother's learning. We're all learning. Let's all do this together. That is what is upsetting. Now imagine this conversation happening in a conservative household. These two kids would have had the hiding of their lives and would have probably given up talking about anything sexual, personal, anything that they learned in school with their parents forever. They would have probably also gone on to experiment sexually earlier through porn, and they would have also probably thought that violence in relationships or abuse in relationships was okay. So the problem here is the fact that without boundaries, without a very severely set context that lays down the foundation of warmth, of connection, of age appropriateness, and of what is okay and what is not okay, this kind of material easily accessible to children, is a minefield. It has the potential to damage their understanding of sex, their understanding of intimacy, their understanding of relationships, and even their bodies, because everyone who's ever watched porn, tell me how many fat people you see. Very few. The bodies depicted in porn are perfect, they're slim, they're beautiful, almost always white. But that is not the only kind of beauty or the only kind of bodies that we know. And when you're getting your information from things like that, you're also getting a very male-centric view of pleasure. Because porn completely undermines the female perspective of pleasure, the female understanding and need for pleasure. It operates on only one function, patriarchal sexuality. Now because I believe in sex ed as essential and absolutely necessary for the growth and well-being of children, I was able to talk to my kid openly about, what this was. I was able to tell him. And through the school, I was able to also counsel the other child. Not reprimand him, but counsel him. Children are curious. They're naturally curious beings. They are going to discover. They're going to learn. They're going to gossip and giggle behind their teachers' backs. There's nothing wrong with that. What is problematic here is that we constantly shut them down. We do not give them the space to discover and learn things. Now with media and all kinds of videos available everywhere, it's very easy for children to come across this kind of material and learn things from it. But we can't stop it because it's a way of life now. We're all addicted to our phones. How do we tell a 12-year-old, put down your phone, put down your phone yourself first? But what we can do is talk to our children and set boundaries. Explain to them that, what you're watching is not necessarily real. What you're watching is also acted. It is something that is a performance. And we can always teach them to not be ashamed of talking about their bodies. About, be it anything from menstruation, from masturbation, which is considered a very taboo subject, from body anxiety, body image issues, to bullying issues. Everything should be openly and lovingly discussed with children in an age-appropriate way. In countries like Sweden and Norway, where comprehensive sexuality education is part of usual curriculum, you see the incidence of teenage pregnancies, of sexually transmitted diseases, of abuse, of bullying are much, much less. Teenagers, if they have the information that they need, are much likely to wait longer to experiment sexually. And when they do, they are much more likely to make correct choices by putting themselves first and not giving in to peer pressure or not giving in to what other people need from them out of a feeling of, loneliness or seeking validation. Sexuality education is not just teaching kids about reproduction. When you do a sex ed class, you don't just tell kids, this is where it goes when two people mate. It is much, much more than that. Thorough sexuality education teaches kids to understand boundaries, their own boundaries, other people's boundaries. It teaches kids to ask for consent. It teaches kids to also enthusiastically give consent. Yes, I agree. It teaches kids to say no. It teaches kids about abuse awareness, about bullying. The difference between toxic relationships and healthy relationships is also covered in CSE. It also teaches kids that all genders and people of all sexual orientations should be respected. The most basic thing that sex ed teaches us is respect. First for ourselves. This is something our culture completely ignores. It just completely flattens us into cardboard boxes where we cannot say no, where we're not allowed to respect ourselves. Sex ed teaches you that. This is more than just biology. Sex ed is life ed. Imagine a classroom where every boy was taught to respect every girl's bodies and her limitations. No hair pulling, no skirt pulling, no making fun of a girl if you see a period stain on her skirt. How many boys have done that? Made fun of a girl, noticed her, she got a stain on her skirt. And that girl, that memory will stay with her forever. And imagine a classroom where boys were also allowed to be sensitive, where they were not forced into being aggressive, where they're not forced into behaving in a violent manner because boys don't cry, Imagine a safe space where boys and girls could be freely expressive, free to explore within boundaries set by those who know better. Imagine a space where everyone felt equal because they were taught to value difference as beautiful. Difference not as ugly, difference of race, difference of color, difference of sex, of sexual orientation, of body sizes as beautiful, as equal. Imagine a classroom like that. I didn't have a classroom like that. 90% of the people in this country don't have a classroom like that. That is why we need to root for sex ed. How have we managed to come from places where non-size zero bodies were beautifully depicted in the temple picture that we just saw, to a place where all we can manage is fake shame? And I say fake shame because these very same people who espouse this fake morality are the first ones to grope girls in public, are the first ones to make fun of transgender people in public. But they will be very hesitant to use the terms vagina or penis in a scientific conversation or even in a regular conversation. These same people will feel no shame in using abuses that demean a woman's body parts, but they will eat me alive if I say kids need sex ed. Hi Ram, हमारे बच्चों को sex सिखाओगी madam? Western culture सिखाओगी? As if the 1.6 billion people in this country have never had sex. And all the babies that we're having every few minutes are all imported from America. Now that is not true. So, sex ed is important. We need to demand it. You guys need to demand it. From your professors, from your selecting committees. Why do we not have sex ed? Why do we not have consent education? Why do we not have gender equality education? Why do you not call people who are trained to deal with this and have people who are trained to train teachers? Because that's the first thing that's missing, no? The whole village is not connected. Teachers are so imbued with their own shame, with their own conditioning, that they can't talk about things like that unless they're taught gently, respectfully, lovingly, that this is what you need to do for the safety of our kids. Now, because I believe in all of this, I can talk to my kid about anything. We discuss pubic hair, we celebrate it because it's a sign of maturity. We celebrate things like growing up with ice cream. When I'm on my period, my kid feels no shame in getting me a sanitary napkin and comforting me. There is no shame in our relationship about anything, because why should something that is natural be shameful? Why should you be ashamed of this? Your beautiful, strong body. Bodies carry us from birth to death. Bodies bear children, they make children. They bear scars, they bear accident, they bear injury. They bear assault and rape and unwanted pregnancies and abortions and miscarriages. For boys, bodies bear brutalization, bullying, violence. Every day you step out of your home, you're violated. You're bullied. Sala, where are you going? Let me hit you. That is the long language we've taught our boys. You do not have the agency to operate in a more softer, gentle way, because that's being feminine. Right? Yeah, so why be ashamed of this? I've learned to accept and love my body the way it is. Fat, aging, deeply scarred, because it has taken me through life. It has taught me not to say yes when my heart says no. It has taught me to be confident and to ask for what I deserve and not what I maybe want in a certain moment. A lot of us here are operating out of loneliness in relationships. We're operating out of a need for warmth, of self-validation. We send selfies to people, we send naked pictures to people, believing that that person will love us. Will she? Is that why you want to get into a relationship? Now, I am not here to take a moralistic standpoint. Self-pleasure is fine, it's okay for adults. But for kids and young people, without the necessary boundaries, to understand these things as entrenched in warmth, in respect, and responsibility, you're setting yourself up for failure. We're setting our kids up for heartbreak and so much trauma. So I urge you to demand sexuality education. And it need not necessarily be taught from a viewpoint of morality or judgment or fear. It can also be made fun. Now, when I started working on Candidly with my friend Ahmad, she came up with this genius idea of making a series of videos that talk to kids about awkward questions. We call it Awkward 101. And we made it entirely out of GIFs. Have a look. I can't play the video because it's against laws. It will be promoting myself. Does this look scary? Or does this look like it has nudity? No nudity there, nothing scary there, nothing shameful there. It's a joyous celebration of questions, of kids asking things, because that is what comes naturally to them. When I counsel people, I have spoken to couples, married couples, who've not had sex for years. Imagine what that must be like, being in an intimate relationship and yet not being intimate. I've spoken to men who are so ashamed of discussing their problems, their sexual, personal, emotional problems, because they've been made to believe that they need to perform in the bedroom, outside the bedroom. I've met women who lead sexually unfulfilled lives because they're too scared to ask for anything, because they'll be labeled a whore, a slut, a wanton woman. Even I'm labeled that because I do the work I do. I cannot tell you the number of times I get messages in my inbox, madam, And it hurts me, but it also gives me an opportunity to address that person and say, hey, you know what, this is not right. What you're doing comes from a place of misinformation. This is what you should be doing. If you want to proposition me, at least do it like a gentleman, add some shairi, add some poetry, add something romantic there, then maybe, if I find you intelligent, I might go out with you. So, we need to really open up our hearts to these things, because if you repress all of this, that is so intimate to us as human beings, that is so natural to us as human beings, there is so much mental illness, there's trauma, there's risk of anxiety, there's risk of depression, there's risk of suicidal behavior, because our bodies are connected to our minds. They affect our sense of self, our sense of worth. But with sex ed, we can change that, because a huge part of sex ed is empathy. Teaching empathy. With empathy, you can transform trauma into healing, vulnerability into confidence, and shame into acceptance. So I urge you to demand for this, to ask for this. If nothing else, do it for yourselves. Because if we have more sex ed everywhere, we'll end up having more deeper, richer, meaningful, more pleasurable. Say yes to pleasure. Pleasure is okay. Asking for it is okay. Within the boundaries that you set for yourself, it's okay. So, ask for that, because there's been enough of shame. बहुत हो गई शर्म. जिसने की शर्म उसके वाकई में फूटे करम. So let us together move from darkness to light, from ignorance to acceptance, and from self-loathing to self-love. Thank you.